Hey guys, it's Andrea and welcome back to VW Family Farm. I don't know if you can see behind me, it is a nasty day here. It's been snowing and now it's raining, and that has a beauty all its own, but it's a good day to stay inside and get some things done. So I'm in the kitchen. I'm going to give you guys hopefully a concise tutorial of how I'm going to make the best loaf of sandwich bread. So let's get started. First thing I want to show you is the pan I'm going to be using. This is a Pullman loaf pan, and so you can see it has a lid on it that slides. I'm actually going to link this exact pan because there's quite a few of them out there. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to be doing these first steps in, this is my KitchenAid mixer bowl. Now you can do this absolutely by hand without a mixer. Just a mixer with a dough hook is going to make your life a lot easier, but you can absolutely do all these steps in a normal bowl and knead and do all the things by hand. First thing we need is 5 3/4 cup of flour. I'm using unbleached all-purpose flour. You can grind your own. You can do just whatever makes your heart happy. I want to show you guys this measuring cup because it is one of my new favorite things. It's a 2-cup measuring cup, and this came from Azure Standard. Just saying that in case you guys love it too, but it's really good for things like this when you already need a large quantity. Next ingredient is 2.5 teaspoons of salt. This is Redmond's real salt. That's just what I like to use. And then 1.5 teaspoons of instant yeast. Then I'm just going to take a plain kitchen whisk and I'm going to whisk those dry ingredients together. I want that salt and that yeast distributed throughout. Now this may sound a bit weird to you. If you've ever, like me, made bread and you have to dissolve the yeast first, this is a bit different recipe. You don't do that. So you just mix it in with the dry ingredients, and then we're going to go ahead and put the rest of the stuff in. So next we're going to add the wet ingredients, and one of those is 3 tablespoons of honey. That's one reason I love this recipe, because it doesn't use just plain sugar, granulated sugar. It uses honey, which I think is more natural. Plus we produce that here on our homestead. So 3 tablespoons. Next is a cup of room temperature water and room temperature milk. This is just a little tip I've learned from bread making over the years. My milk was not room temperature, so I just did a bit warmer water and then my cold milk, and it made them both room temperature. So a cup of water, half a cup of milk. And finally, 7 tablespoons of room temperature butter. So you can see this is not mixed at all. I'm going to go ahead and put it on my mixer, and I'm going to let the dough hook do the work. Okay, in the spirit of transparency, don't do what I just did, focusing on the video and not on what you're doing. I just thought I was locking this into place, and I just flipped it all the way on and slung flour and milk everywhere. So, round 2. So you can see it all comes together and it forms a good dough that's all stuck together, that it's pulled everything away from the sides. In the recipe it calls this a nice supple dough. So I guess you'd call that supple. So the next thing is you're going to grease a bowl because you want this to be able to rise without sticking to the sides. I'm actually just going to take this out and grease this bowl because I'm all about less dishes to wash. And then you're going to let that rise for 90 minutes. Another good tip when you are making bread, especially in the winter, is you need a warm place, and that might be hard to come by in your house. So I'm going to show you where I'm going to let this rise. You want to cover this bowl. You could use like a damp dish towel. I actually bought these. My kids jokingly call them shower caps, but really it is a bowl cover. I bought these off of Amazon. They're perfect for sourdough that I do because you need to create not necessarily a humid environment, but you definitely don't want the inside of this to dry out because it kind of forms a crust on the dough, and that's what prevents your dough, whether it's traditional dough, whether it's sourdough, prevents it from being able to rise because it gets kind of hard and dry on the top, and then generally those breads don't rise as well. So put something over the top. If you are like me and you struggle with a warm place in your house, our house just tends to stay cool. So what I do is a super easy trick that all of you have is I turn on the light in my oven. I don't turn on my oven, I just turn the light on because it creates just a tiny amount of heat. It's not a hot or really even a warm environment, it's just it's just a little less cold, if that makes sense. So I'm going to sit this down in here. The thing about it is, don't forget it's in there and turn your oven on to preheat. Don't let your family not know it's in there and let them turn the oven on, because I also have my sourdough starter down in there right now. Either one of these things, if they turn on the oven to preheat, they're toast, but you know what I mean. So after it has risen, we're going to take it out and we're going to flatten it out into a rectangle that's as long as the pan. So I've got my pan sitting here so I can kind of see how long to make this. And then we're going to take it with the long way facing us and fold this to the middle, fold the top down to the middle, and then just kind of fold it in half. You're basically kind of rolling it up. You're going to pinch the seam together here. Then we're going to put it seam side down into our pan. You're going to want to grease your pan and your lid so that it doesn't stick and so it has room to rise. We're going to put it over in the pan. And then you're going to want to press this down into the corners of the pan, because our goal is we want to wind up with a squared off loaf on the sides, the bottom, and the top. We're going for basically what you would buy a store-bought loaf of sandwich bread. That's kind of our result that we're going for. So you got to kind of encourage it to get down into the corners. Now we're going to slide our lid back on, but we're going to slide it, we're going to leave where we can see down in there, and we're going to let it rise up pretty far up in this pan before we bake it. So we're going to put it back in a warm place, probably, depending on the warmth of your house, for another hour and a half or so. We're just going to keep an eye on it. So when it starts getting towards the end of your rise time, you'll know that your bread is rising pretty good because you left the crack and you can peek in there. Go ahead and heat your oven up to 425, and then when it gets just below the lip of the pan, which I'm going to show you in just a second, you're going to go ahead and close the lid all the way, and we're going to bake it with the lid closed for 25 minutes. So you can see it's risen up quite a bit. It's not as risen up over here. That's probably the way the shape I put it in there, but we'll see what it turns out like when it's completely done. So after 25 minutes, we are going to take the lid off, and then we are going to see what it looks like, and then we're going to bake it for 5 more minutes to just give it a nice golden brown. So 5 more minutes, it'll be done. You can see it didn't rise up all the way on the corners. I really think that's because my house is so cool today. Sometimes you just got to go with it because, you know, temperatures, and there's all kinds of factors in making bread. It's not going to come out absolutely uniform every single time, but that's part of it. Thanks for hanging out with me while I made this bread. It really is a great recipe. This recipe is definitely something you guys should give a try, especially if you're wanting to get into making your own bread. And just remember, guys, it's just little steps along the way that add up. Commit to making small changes this year and just see how big they add up to at the end of this year. And making your own bread at home is one of those things that's doable for everyone, no matter where you live, how small of an apartment or, you know, whatever the case may be. The ingredients for bread are inexpensive. Making bread is fun and actually kind of therapeutic, and it's just a really good hobby, and it's really good for your health as well. So I hope you give it a try. Hope you give this recipe a try, and I'll put the ingredients and the instructions down in the description, as well as I'll link the pan. Also, one last thing, I cannot sign off without showing you guys this literally life-changing knife. This is called a bow knife. It's a bread knife, and this is just on there because it's very, very, very sharp. It's a stainless steel blade. Let me hold it like this where you can see it. Never goes dull. I got this off Amazon. I've just been seeing people use them. Wanted one, and so we're going to use it to cut off a slice of this bread. This is really, really, really such a must if you make much bread, especially sourdough, because you know how it can be really crusty, and that's part of its characteristics, but it's kind of difficult to cut sometimes. This will slice through it like a dream, and you can slice thin slices. Get you one of these. I'll link this too, but there's lots of them out there, but I'll link this one just because I kind of did some research into them, and this was a good one. This blade is supposed to never go dull. We'll see about that, but anyway, I'll link it below. It's good. So it's the next day, and I'm actually editing this video, and I got to thinking, this is sandwich bread, and I didn't show you guys it in a sandwich. That's the true test. How does it hold up in a sandwich? Does it crumble and fall apart? Well, the true critic of that is Ben. He takes sandwiches almost every day, so we are going to see what he thinks of this bread.
So one of the things I can't stand, don't like, is when I have a sandwich and either driving down the road eating it or just pulled over and eating it in the truck, is when I take a bite and crumbs just crumble all down me. That's one thing that I think sourdough bread does a lot of the times is it's just really crumbly. So this right here, I don't have a crumble out of it. I really like it.